Cataclysm came out, tier 11 was cleared in 2 hours, and contrary to any other expansion that came before, we have a beautiful rainbow of many classes decorating the rankings. But much like in California suburbs, we have inclusion and we have inclusion. It's very different. There are still a bunch of classes though that have a reasonable shot of hitting rank 1 in this meta, and that's definitely something new here. So let's take a look at the rankings. The class you will see represented at the top ranks the most is going to be the Fire Mage. Now there is a good reason for that, and it is RNG. There are many types of fights in tier 11. Some fights help the Fire Mage, some fights suck for the Fire Mage, but still there is one whole reason that keeps them at the top, and that is luck. You see, they have a chance of getting instant pyroblast. That's the 6-second super big fireball that does 1 trillion damage. So you can theoretically get super lucky, get a bunch of free pyroblasts, especially in a short fight. This is where it really matters. And even if you're not the best for that specific fight, you can in theory get lucky enough to get to the top ranks. And that's what you see in the ranks. You're gonna see a Fire Mage in pretty much any fight just because of that. There are also a lot of fights that actually play up to the Fire Mage's strength. You're gonna see, for example, in Cho'Gall, you gotta go down to rank 22nd to see a non-Fire Mage in the rankings. That's insane. Why is that happening? That's a bit of a cheese. I explained it in my Bastion of Twilight guide, but essentially there is the corruption mechanic in Cho'Gall, and if you can take all the stacks of corruption on purpose, yes, you're gonna take damage, you're not gonna be able to heal, but your spells become instant. Once again, instant freaking pyroblast, guys. So you can see Fire Mages that are pulling in single target 50k DPS already just because of that cheese. They will go for like 30 seconds, so it helps a lot if you're in a super good guild that can kill it fast, because that's about as long as you're gonna survive without any heals. But the people that can cheese it successfully, they are killing it. The other strength that you can see is that they have a lot of cleaving damage. Fire Mages are some of the best cleavers in the game. Once again, a fight like Cho'Gall or Halfus, which is in that fight, Halfus, it has the luckiest mage in the whole freaking universe in the top 1 right now. I don't know how the freak he got that damage that he got, but Living Bomb and the dot spreading mechanic, they help a lot because the damage to the ads count, and that's a lot of damage you can do right there. My prediction was wrong this tier. I thought the Arcane Mage was gonna outperform, was gonna be really strong, but sadly it wasn't. Apparently the fact that the fights are much shorter in Classic are not helping. I think the damage and the mechanics are a lot tighter in Classic, by the way, in Heroics, but at the same time the HP values are a lot higher. So it's a little weird. My prediction that the Arcane Mage was gonna do very well in this phase didn't come to light, sadly. There are a couple explanations for it. First of all, we are early in progression. I think when we get to the point where we optimize our movement and we have to move less, that's a big one right there, the Arcane Mage is gonna show up a little more. But also, I think bosses are dying a little too fast. So yeah, I don't think we're gonna get there anytime soon. We might have to wait until tier 12 to see the true rise of the Arcane Mage. It will happen at some point. They do scale, they are very good. Another really interesting class is the Combat Rogue. You see, the Warcraft logs had a rule that Lava Parasite damage in Magmo doesn't count anymore, so all the AoE classes, your Elemental Shamans for example, they got shafted. But there's this little Combat Rogue right there killing it. They are all 10 of them in the top 10 of Magmo. Why is that? That's because in Heroic you got the Blazing Bone construct, this little skeleton like dude that goes like wait, that guy. Well, if you gotta hit 2 targets, not 3, not 1, just 2, in that particular scenario, being a Combat Rogue is the best spec in the game. Blade Flurry is the best cleaving ability in the game for 2 targets. So every single ranker in the top 10s in Magmo is a Combat Rogue right now, and they are killing it. They are an okay spec, they are okay in this tier, they do decent damage in single target, but they are sprinkled in the top 10 of a bunch of fights actually, but in Magmo is where they really shine. One thing that I can see in the future is that once the super competent parsing race, they start figuring out like ways to survive getting the Omnotron defense system guys together, that might become a way to increase the damage, like just putting them two together and clip them. We might see a little more combat rogue on that. But I think aside from Magmo, we're gonna see the combat rogue fall off a little bit later in this tier, just because there is a lot of good candidates that can abuse the mechanics of other fights. And yes, of course, we're gonna talk about that. First of all, in the Throne of the Four Winds, we're gonna move on a little here. You may wanna get 4 survival hunters next week for your raid, guys, because there is really no freaking contest in here. Now, this is also a cheese, like the fire mage, in the sense that survival lives and dies for the free explosive shot procs. So of course RNG is gonna play a huge role in this. When you see at the top 100s, the top 10s in the world, what you're really seeing is a hunter that got really lucky. But they got one thing on the fire mage that is the reason that fire mages are not performing here and the survival hunters are killing them in the middles, and that is that the hunters do not need 20 seconds of setup to get all their dots rolling. This fight on paper would have been ideal for a fire mage. There is low movement, there is single target damage the whole time, so a fire mage should be able to perform very well. The problem is that after 90 seconds you gotta swap from your boss to Nesir to DPS that guy, and that's what ruins them, because they gotta redo all their dots for like 10 seconds and then go back and redo all their dots again, and that screws them royally. Survival hunters also dominate Atramides for a similar reason. Basically, there is a lot of movement in Atramides, and you need to be ranged in Atramides because he's gonna fly for like 10 seconds, and those 10 seconds of flying is gonna ruin the parses of every melee DPSer. They got really upset. The rogue in my raid got really upset when he couldn't hit him for 10 seconds, let me tell you that much. But when you need constant freaking movement, there is nothing better than a hunter. Hunters can do all the rotation without any flaws. I think as the strats get refined here again, we might see a little bit more fire mages creeping up in the ranks. There is one fire mage currently in top 10, so like that guy found a way to like optimize his movement. I think we're gonna see a little bit more of that. So fire mage, again, stonks go up. Now, even though the elemental shaman has a god tier AoE, one of the best in the game, sadly all the fights they shun on this tier, they do not count for the logs, because Warcraft logs disabled all the tiny ads, like the worms for example. So in the fights where like our shaman would have normally been top 1, they are not gonna show up that way in the log websites anymore. But if you take it out, the chain lightning glyph, if you remove it, so you do 3 targets instead of 8 for a little bit more damage, all of a sudden they are very strong at cleaving. And the fight that they are dominating, they are starting to figure this out, is Valiona and Terralion. Now, you are gonna need some cooperation with your tank. You're gonna need some really careful boss positioning, but if you get one of the dragons to stand on the right side of the room when Valiona or Terralion are flying above you, you can hit them both with chain lightning, okay? So they can basically be cleaving when everybody else is doing damage to one target. It's like they are playing 3D chess and you are playing poop chess. The reason why shamans suck is that if they cannot chain lightning, the lightning shield charges do not go up very fast, and okay, you need charges with your lightning shield to do damage. The more you have, the more your earth shock is gonna do damage. And when you're hitting 2 targets instead of 1, of course, you are stacking them twice as fast. So in a sense, cleaving is gonna increase your single target damage to the main target too. Sadly, tier 11 doesn't have a lot of cleaving fights, especially because all the cleaving fights, there are better cleavers in this tier. That's not gonna be the case next tier, happily. So they are not very well represented here, but in a couple select fights where there's mobs that have some distance, you also see them in Omnotron defense system. A couple of them found a way to cheese that and actually get the chains to hit both. They are showing up, and they are getting better every freaking piece of gear they get. Now, a solid spec that has really good DPS is actually only dominating one fight in this tier, and that is the Arms Warrior. The Arms Warrior is considered by most people to be the king of Cataclysm, and that's for very good reason. They have very good damage, but their main strength, their main identity, let's say, is their burst AoE. They have some of the best freaking AoE in the game, period. Of course, there is only one fight in AoE that actually counts for the AoE in the logs, and that is Maloriak. Maloriak has a mechanic where he's gonna spawn ads and a couple guilds find a way to cheese it and spawn 20 of the ads at the same time and somehow not dying. That's very difficult to do, but you can do it. That is where the Arms Warrior is killing every single other class. Don't worry, because we're gonna see other tiers where AoE is gonna become a lot more relevant, but the Arms Warrior is only doing well in this one. You can see him in a couple select cleaving fights. You can see like maybe a top 9, a top 8 Arms Warrior in there. I think Alone though is basically carrying the warrior numbers up. That guy is in every fight just because he's an insane player. But if you wanna actually top the miders, Arms Warrior may not be the one for you this tier. Finally, the last person in the planet that keeps playing Warlock is killing it right now, okay? For real, Warlocks have always been good in Cataclysm. They have always been popular in Cataclysm private servers, but for whatever reason, I cannot see any Warlocks in my freaking server. They are not playing the class. Nobody wants to play this class, and I can't figure out why. Regardless, the Demonology Warlock, as I predicted, is killing it in this tier. With single target is very strong, with AoE is top tier. There is no single fight where a Demonology Warlock is gonna dominate. I think a big factor of that is that there is not enough Warlocks, because I've seen many Warlocks at top 1, and by many I mean the same 3 names, and that's kind of the problem. I think there are a very limited amount of Warlocks that are in a top raiding guild. But they have a lot going for them. If you're willing to go the extra 700 miles that it takes to play a Warlock perfectly, you are gonna need to stack different stats on different sets. For cleaving and for DPS single target, you need 2 gear sets and a mastery set and a normal set. You are gonna need to learn 4 different cleaving rotations. That's right, there is 4 different cleaving rotations, a super complex single target rotation. The AoE rotation is easy. That's the only thing you got for you. So it is not entirely shocking that nobody wants to play a Warlock, because playing a Warlock takes a lot of skill. For example, I played a Warlock before and I am pretty sure I would not be able to pilot a Warlock anymore. But currently there is this player that's going by the name of Hyped W that is single-handedly keeping the Warlock in every top 10. He is a beast. He's doing this weird thing because he's doing Fell Hunter and Doomguard in a weird rotation. We might have to do a video breaking it down later. But he seems to really understand the Warlock beyond what many people understand the Warlock. I didn't see this particular playstyle coming at all. We might have to check it out. It's really, really interesting to see. So conclusions is Fire Mage, top of the line. Survival Hunter, top of the line. And please roll a Warlock. We need Warlocks. We cannot find Warlocks. What are you doing with your life? Uninstall the game, reinstall the game, and this time make a Warlock instead. Actually, you don't need to uninstall the game and reinstall it. You can like just make a character without doing that. And also subscribe, leave a like, join the Discord, and thank you for watching.